100 years. That is how long the diet industry has owned your body. Weight Watchers built an empire on shame and calorie counting. Jenny Craig turned portion control into a billion-dollar TV franchise. Gym chains expanded into every suburb on Earth, and supplement brands flooded pharmacy shelves to such an extent that the average American walked past 12 of them before buying milk. The system was not perfect, but it was untouchable. Then a tiny Danish pharmaceutical company changed everything with a single weekly injection. Weight Watchers lost roughly 70% of its stock value in under 2 years and filed for bankruptcy in 2025. Not restructuring, full bankruptcy. Jenny Craig, after 4 decades of operation, shut its doors permanently in 2023. Planet Fitness watched its membership growth thesis collapse almost overnight. Processed food giants announced emergency product formulations that nobody had asked for. The entire $100 billion diet and fitness ecosystem, a system that had survived every fad, every competitor, every cultural shift, began convulsing. The architect of all this destruction was not a Silicon Valley startup. It was not a disruptive app or a viral fitness trend. It was a single molecule called semaglutide, sold as Ozempic, originally approved to treat type 2 diabetes, now quietly becoming the most consequential pharmaceutical product since the birth control pill. But here is what the marketing campaigns and the glowing magazine covers will not tell you. The story of Ozempic is not a story about weight loss. It is a story about who profits when a drug reshapes the human body at a population scale, and what it costs the person trapped inside that arrangement in ways you are not supposed to understand clearly. The numbers came in fast, and they came in brutal. Novo Nordisk's combined Ozempic and Wegovy revenue hit approximately $32 billion in 2025, accounting for roughly 67% of the company's total sales. That single product line generated more annual revenue than the GDP of several small nations. The company had become, briefly, the most valuable publicly listed company in all of Europe. The diet industry didn't lose to a better diet. It lost to a drug that made hunger itself optional. Weight Watchers, a company that had survived 6 decades by selling discipline 1 meeting at a time, filed for bankruptcy. The company that had Oprah Winfrey on its board, that had trademarked the language of self-improvement, folded. Jenny Craig went first, closing every location after 40 years without a pivot or a relaunch. Just closed. The processed food industry entered full panic. Conagra, Nestlé, and General Mills began announcing reformulated products with smaller portion sizes and lower calorie counts. Food executives who had spent their careers resisting external pressure on their products suddenly discovered a fondness for nutrition science. Analysts at Goldman Sachs estimated that GLP-1 drugs could reduce total consumer spending on food by hundreds of billions of dollars over the next decade. What nobody in the diet industry had modelled was this. They were not competing with a better product. They were competing with a pharmaceutical intervention that rewired the biological signal that made their entire industry possible, and they had no answer for it. The machine that profits from your hunger had met something that could simply switch the hunger off. Nobody set out to kill the diet industry. That part really is an accident. The story begins in the 1980s when researchers studying digestion discovered a natural hormone produced in your gut after eating. They called it glucagon-like peptide 1, GLP-1. Its job was simple. Tell your brain you are full, trigger insulin production, and slow down the rate at which your stomach empties food. A natural off-switch for appetite buried inside your own biology. For years, scientists explored whether they could mimic that signal artificially. The goal was purely clinical: help type 2 diabetic patients regulate blood sugar without the brutal side effects of older drugs. By 2012, Novo Nordisk had a working version, an injectable GLP-1 receptor agonist called liraglutide, sold as Victoza. It managed blood sugar. And then the patients started reporting something unexpected. They were losing weight, significant weight, without trying. The pivot that followed was one of the most commercially precise moves in pharmaceutical history. Novo took the next generation of that molecule, semaglutide, turbocharged the dosage, and relaunched it specifically for obesity under the brand name Wegovy in 2021. Ozempic, the lower-dose diabetes version using the same molecule, was already in circulation. What had started as a tool for managing blood sugar became the fastest-growing pharmaceutical product in modern history. A drug designed for a niche clinical population accidentally unlocked the one thing the entire diet industry had promised for a century and never delivered: effortless weight loss. The machine noticed, and so did Hollywood. If this story is already changing how you think about Ozempic, stay with us, because the next chapter is where the narrative starts to fracture completely. Subscribe if you haven't, and keep watching. The drug did not go viral because of science. It went viral because of proximity. It started, as most modern contagions do, in Los Angeles. A small cluster of celebrities began losing weight at a speed that looked impossible to anyone who had ever actually tried. The speculation was immediate and specific. That kind of rapid, uniform transformation, combined with a sudden and visible disinterest in food in public settings, carried a signature that people in entertainment recognized. By late 2022, Ozempic was the worst-kept secret in Hollywood. Then it jumped from celebrity circles to social media at a velocity that nobody in the pharmaceutical industry had modeled. TikTok's algorithm does not care about clinical trials. It cares about before and after. The Ozempic face discourse, the dramatic transformation videos, the casual confessions from prominent figures, all of it fed a loop that reached hundreds of millions of people who had never considered injectable medication for anything other than illness. The behavioural psychology here is precise. When the thin and powerful appear to be using something, the aspirational pull is overwhelming. It bypasses rational cost-benefit analysis entirely. People who had never given themselves an injection began asking their doctors for prescriptions at a rate that created global supply shortages by mid-2022. Novo Nordisk could not manufacture Ozempic fast enough. Diabetic patients who had depended on the drug for blood sugar control found themselves unable to access it because executives and influencers were buying it for weight loss. The contagion had outrun the supply chain, the clinical system, and every oversight framework designed to prevent exactly this outcome. You have heard the success story. You have seen the before and afters. Now comes the part that Novo Nordisk's marketing budget is designed to keep you from thinking about too carefully. The mainstream narrative around Ozempic is almost perfectly constructed. According to the official story, obesity is a chronic disease, and Ozempic is a breakthrough treatment. The drug suppresses appetite by mimicking a natural hormone. It reduces blood sugar. It has demonstrated cardiovascular benefits in clinical trials. It helps millions of people lose weight they could not lose through willpower or lifestyle change alone. The FDA approved it. Leading hospitals prescribe it. Prominent physicians champion it publicly. Every part of that narrative is technically accurate, and none of it is the whole story. What the official myth requires you to believe is that a weekly injection primarily affects your appetite, that the trade-offs are manageable and well understood, and that the clinical trial populations, which were monitored, supported, and given controlled conditions, represent the tens of millions of people now taking this drug in the real world without that support structure. And it requires you to trust that a pharmaceutical company with $32 billion in annual revenue from a single molecule has adequately disclosed every material risk to every prescribing physician and every patient. In January 2025, the FDA required Novo Nordisk to update the Ozempic label to state that it is not recommended in patients with severe gastroparesis. Notice what that wording does not say. It does not say the drug causes gastroparesis. That distinction is worth billions of dollars in liability, and it matters enormously to the thousands of people currently suing Novo Nordisk in federal court. Here is what the body is quietly losing while the scale moves in the right direction. The weight loss on Ozempic is real. Nobody disputes that. But researchers have grown increasingly alarmed by what is coming off alongside the fat. Studies spanning 68 to 72 weeks found that patients lost up to 10% of their total muscle mass while on semaglutide. That is the equivalent of roughly 20 years of normal age-related muscle loss, compressed into just over a year. A separate analysis found that between 25% and 39% of all weight lost on GLP-1 drugs is lean muscle mass, not fat. A 2024 randomized controlled trial found that 52 weeks of weekly semaglutide reduced hip bone mineral density by 2.6% and lumbar spine density by 2.1%. For a 35-year-old, those numbers are concerning. For someone over 65, they can be catastrophic. A 2025 retrospective cohort study following older adults with type 2 diabetes on semaglutide for 24 months found evidence of accelerated sarcopenia, particularly at higher doses and in patients who already had low baseline muscle mass and reduced physical function. Then there is the legal picture. As of May 2026, 3,636 lawsuits are pending in federal multi-district litigation against Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly. The cases fall into two MDLs, one focused on gastroparesis and gastrointestinal injuries, the other on vision loss, specifically a condition called NAION, a form of optic nerve damage. One case involves a 76-year-old woman who allegedly developed persistent vomiting and stomach paralysis after several months of Ozempic use, ultimately leading to aspiration and death, with the lawsuit claiming the manufacturer failed to adequately warn about serious gastrointestinal side effects. In June 2025, European regulators added NAION as a very rare side effect on the Ozempic label, years after patients had already begun reporting the condition. These are not fringe cases. These are people who were told the trade-offs were manageable. You now know what the drug takes from your body. What comes next is the financial model built around everything it takes from your wallet. And it is a model you were never meant to see all at once. The most important sentence in any honest Ozempic conversation is this one: the drug is designed to be taken forever. This is not a criticism or a fringe position. It is the clinical reality, stated openly by the researchers who developed it, and confirmed by every major study on what happens when patients stop. A 2026 BMJ meta-analysis covering 37 studies and over 9,300 patients found that people who stop GLP-1 drugs regain weight at an average rate of 0.4 kilograms per month. Based on that rate, body weight returns to pre-treatment levels within approximately 1.7 years. The same analysis found that people who stopped weight loss drugs regained weight approximately 4 times faster than people who lost weight through diet or exercise alone. People taking the most common GLP-1 drugs lost an average of 33 pounds while on treatment, but gained back about 22 pounds within a year of stopping. The hunger signals that the drug had been suppressing return with full force the moment semaglutide leaves the system. Blood pressure, cholesterol and blood sugar markers follow the same pattern. The health gains reverse almost entirely. Novo Nordisk's list price for Ozempic and Wegovy sat at roughly $1,000 to $1,350 per month before recent price reductions, with a government-negotiated price of $245 per month now available for Medicare-eligible patients. A lifetime subscription to a drug you cannot stop without losing everything it gave you begins as a financial calculation that dwarfs almost any other recurring healthcare cost a person will face across their life. You are not purchasing health, you are renting it on a lease that never expires. Multiply that subscription by a population and you begin to understand what governments are staring at. The World Health Organization estimates over 890 million adults worldwide are living with obesity. The United States alone has approximately 100 million adults classified as obese. Insurance companies have responded by capping coverage periods or excluding GLP-1 drugs from employer-sponsored plans entirely. And a JAMA Network Open analysis found the vast majority of patients stopped taking these drugs within 2 years, often because of cost, side effects, or loss of coverage. The NHS in the United Kingdom has begun rationing access to Wegovy, creating tiered eligibility criteria precisely because the budget mathematics do not function at the population scale. The result in every healthcare system attempting to accommodate these drugs is the same: a population cycling through access and withdrawal. They access the drug, they lose the weight, they lose coverage, the weight returns 4 times faster than it left, they attempt to access the drug again. Each interruption compounds the muscle loss, the bone density decline, and the metabolic disruption of a body that has been chemically overridden and then abandoned mid-process. Legal analysts are already projecting total liability from ongoing litigation, exceeding $2 billion, a figure that does not include the downstream healthcare costs of managing the side effects now working their way through federal court. This is not a healthcare solution with a cost problem attached. This is a business model with a healthcare problem attached. Here is the question the entire Ozempic conversation is built to prevent you from asking. Why are so many people obese in the first place? The food environment that created the obesity epidemic, the ultra-processed products engineered for maximum palatability, the portion sizes that have grown by up to 500% since the 1950s, the agricultural subsidies that make sugar cheaper than vegetables, none of that has changed. None of it will change because of Ozempic. In fact, it cannot change because the companies profiting from that environment and the companies profiting from the pharmaceutical response to it are operating in parallel, insulated from each other by design. Ozempic suppresses the appetite signal. It does not touch the system that manufactured the appetite crisis. The food companies that spent decades engineering hyper-palatable products to override your natural satiety response now exist in a world where a pharmaceutical company has simply built a stronger override. The root cause remains completely intact and more profitable than ever. What GLP-1 drugs offer is biological management of a societal failure. And biological management at $245 to $1,000 per month, per person, for life, is an extraordinarily profitable way to avoid solving the actual problem. The metabolic dysfunction that drives obesity, the relationship between chronic stress, sleep deprivation, food quality and hormonal signaling remains entirely unaddressed by a drug that only works on appetite while you keep paying for it. You're not getting healthier. You're getting quieter about being sick. Nobody in this story is a villain in the cartoon sense. Novo Nordisk developed a real drug that delivers real benefits for real patients. Diabetics using Ozempic for its intended purpose have genuinely improved outcomes. The cardiovascular data have merit. The weight loss is real. For a specific population of patients, under appropriate medical supervision, this drug has changed lives. But the broader Ozempic story is a warning about what happens when a pharmaceutical intervention meets an unresolved societal crisis at the population scale, when the financial model built around that intervention requires the crisis to remain chronic, and when hype moves faster than clinical caution by several years. Federal pretrial proceedings for GLP-1 drug lawsuits continue into 2026, with the court expected to move toward coordinated discovery and begin identifying representative cases for bellwether trials, testing how juries respond to evidence that patients were not adequately warned about the risks they were accepting. The 3,636 people currently in federal litigation are the visible edge of a much larger population that was told the trade-offs were manageable. The real danger is not Ozempic specifically. The real danger is the logic it represents, that the most complex behavioural, nutritional and environmental crisis in modern medicine can be resolved by a weekly injection that you must take for the rest of your life or lose everything it gave you. Whoever profits from that dependency is not in the business of curing anything. They're in the business of managing a condition indefinitely. The trillion-dollar syringe is real. Just make sure you understand exactly what it is injecting you with before you sign the lease on your own biology. If this video changed how you think about Ozempic, share it with someone who needs to see it. The algorithm buries this kind of content. Your sharing it is what keeps it alive. Subscribe for more stories about the real economics behind the headlines that are quietly shaping your world.